Why are we seeing so much more violence these days? Just in this past week, we've had 2 school shootings. We had the murder of Irina Zaruska and, of course, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. There are reasons that this happens. I want to address those. We need to do something as a society about why this is happening. First of all, let me give you some statistics. So in the decade of the 1950s, there were 32 school shootings. In the 1960s, there were 100. In the 1970s, 49. In the 1980s, 79. In the 1990s, 123. In the decade of 2000 to 2010, there were 88. Now, listen to this. This is where we have a dramatic increase. In the decade 2010 to 2020, we had 259 school shootings. So that is more than double most of the previous decades. Now, 2020 to 2025, so this is just half a decade, we're already at 287 school shootings. So what's happening? Why are we seeing so much more violence? The first factor is nutrition. Our food supply has been steadily getting worse and worse. When I was studying to become a nutritionist back in the early 1990s, one of my textbooks was a book called Nutritional Guidelines for Correcting Behavior by Barbara Reed. She was a PhD in nutrition, and she was the head of the correctional facility for youth in Ohio. And she had an idea that diet had something to do with violent behavior. She got permission to implement a program into the juvenile detention facility where she was overseeing. And what she did is she cut out dairy products, she cut out processed sugar products, and she also cut out white flour products. Additionally, she added in B vitamins. All the people in the correctional facility took a B complex vitamin, and there were dramatic reductions in the amount of violence in the facility. And then once these people served their time and got out, there was far, far less recidivism. Her results were so impressive that the state of Ohio actually adopted her practices across the whole state for the juvenile program. One of the biggest changes in our food supply is ultra-processed foods. Now I want to read you a definition of what an ultra-processed food is, and this comes from a lawsuit that's currently pending. Ultra-processed foods are industrial produced edible substances that are imitations of food. They consist of former foods that have been fractioned into substances, chemically modified, combined with additives, and then reassembled using industrial techniques such as molding, extrusion, and pressurization. So you've probably seen this in foods like chicken nuggets. They started off with chicken parts of whatever kind, and then they break it all apart, they add a bunch of other stuff, they mold it into. Pringles is a great example of that. In fact, they can't even call Pringles legally a potato chip because only 42% of the product is actually potato. This is a practice that has increased over the last several decades. Processed food didn't start off as bad. I mean, one great example in my life is McDonald's. My first job was in McDonald's. It was in 1971, and at that time, our French fries were cut from real potatoes, fried in beef tallow, and we added salt. That was it. There were no other chemicals or additives. Today, there are 19 ingredients in a McDonald's French fry, including chemicals to keep the oil from bubbling too much, chemicals to preserve the food. It's crazy that what looks like the same thing we ate a few decades ago has morphed into something that is not natural at all. We did see in the 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s an increase in these ultra-processed foods. Then we also saw an increase of the amount of consumption of these ultra-processed foods. So families became busier and busier. As women had to enter the workforce, there were less women being able to stay at home. A lot of that is by necessity. Some of that is because women would like to work outside the home. But regardless, we're eating out more and more and more in the last 20 years than we ever have before. So nutrition does make a difference in violent behavior. Next, I want to take a look at electromagnetic fields. And you might think, what in the heck does that have to do with anything? And it's not so much that we're devoted to screen time, it's actually the electronics of it. When you are around cell phone radiation, Wi-Fi radiation, it opens channels for calcium to feed into the cells that are not supposed to be forced open, and so it creates damage to these cells, brain cells, nerve cells, and other cells in the body. If you look at the statistics, when we started seeing the rise in these violent behaviors in the decade of 2010 is when we first started getting Wi-Fi and having it be popularized. We also got smart meters in about 2010, 2011, in that time frame. So our meters are pinging out high levels of these fields, and people neurologically are affected by that. You have to look at the fact that these are creating irritation in the body, and people are not able to control themselves to the same degree. Like, we're not as calm as we used to be because of these things.